Here's a cool little lesson on dissonance. So there are 3 dissonances that are important to understand if you were to start out trying to understand dissonance. There's one. This is a minor second. It's also called a semitone. So if you go from any note to any other note on the piano, you're going to get this interval. And played together, it's an extreme dissonance. This is the most extreme dissonance, unless you start to chew down this note on your guitar and it becomes like a quarter tone, then it'll be even more dissonant. But this is the most extreme functional dissonance. Right. Then the next one is this, which we call a consonant dissonance, because it's actually a much nicer dissonance than that. And in C major, this note is in C major, so it's a diatonic dissonance, meaning that it's within the key, even though it's still dissonant. So I'll demonstrate that now. Here's a C major chord, and I'm going to put this note in there. And if you listen to this chord, that's quite cool, right? That's why you can add a 9th into most chords and get away with it and make your sound a bit more complex. So what dissonance does is it makes your sound more complex. So watch, here's your C major chord. And if I put in this note here, it sounds more complex, but it's still in the key, or diatonic, or consonant, still has a consonant sound. And then the next dissonance you get is this one, okay, which is called an augmented fourth. So if you go through the C major scale like this, and you take a whole bunch of notes and you put them on top of each other and you try them out, you'll get different kind of tonal textures, if you want. And then you can see how that sounds, right? So listen to this. So those are all consonant intervals. This one is your dissonance. This is certainly not a dissonance. This one here doesn't really represent major or minor, the perfect fourth, but it's not dissonance. Same with the fifth, that's why it's called a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. And then the sixth is really beautiful. Anytime you have thirds or sixes in harmony, fantastic. And then this one is dissonance, but it's also consonant dissonance. And if you take this note up here, you'll see that you actually have a semitone. But because it's in the key, look how cool it sounds. Okay, and then the octave is certainly not a dissonance. Okay, so you've got 3 main dissonances. I forgot. Let's try minor intervals. Also not a dissonance. It's sad, but it's not dissonant, okay? Even a minor sixth. Sad, but not dissonance. Okay, but if you start doing this, now you've got your dissonance. A G flat is the same as an F sharp, so you're back to that interval. So just to recap, there are 3 main dissonances. There we go. Now, here's the interesting story. This interval here first appeared prominently in Wagner's Tristan and Isolde. It's an opera. And what happens in the second bar is there is a chord with this interval in it. And this chord had happened before, but it was so prominently used in the opera that basically what happened was that it got labeled the Tristan chord. Okay? So suddenly this chord is very prominent, and of course this note is out of the key. And basically this whole opera kicks off the post-romantic period. So we went from romantic to post-romantic with one chord, or the emphasis on a chord with an augmented fourth in it. Okay, and after that, this chord then creeps in. It was always there, the note was always there. In fact, before the Baroque era, they used to call this the devil's note. They used to say this is the devil's note because it doesn't really fit into any chord. And suddenly it's fitting in everywhere. Is that a comment on society after 1865? Not sure. Okay, so in classical music, it now becomes very prominent. And then suddenly in jazz, in the blues scale, it becomes very prominent. There it is in your blues scale. And of course, Bud Powell in the 50s started putting this note into all dominant chords. So if you had a dominant C7 chord, right, which would sound like this, it's the dominant of F, but Bud Powell would do this. So now your dominant chord in jazz would sound like that. So it kicked off the post-romantic era in classical. It kicks off jazz, and now suddenly you hear it in West Side Story. Maria. Isn't that cool? Maria. And it signifies the dissonance of the racial tension in West Side Story. And where else do you hear it? The Simpsons. Because the Simpsons are a dysfunctional family. How cool is that?